These guys from a podcast called This Podcast is Making Me Thursday want to talk to you. And I think and I said, you don't have to tell me what it's about. I said, if it's called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, you definitely don't need to tell me what it's about. And I'm going on. This is what I want to do.
It's a Seinfeld podcast. It's called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty. But I thought, this is what a podcast should be.
I just did the Seinfeld guys pod the other day. It came up.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Oh,
that one. Shout out. We've done it. I've done it. Have you did it?
I've not gotten a chance to do it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
It's so fun. They're so fun.
When I don't know, it must have shown up in my feed, but I see these guys tweeting about Seinfeld. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I find it's a podcast called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty.
One of the most popular Seinfeld podcasts is This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, co-hosted by Chris O'Hara and Tony Chulo.
Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 190. Today's guest is a Tony Award-winning actor of stage and screen. You know him from Independence Day, Mafia, Feud, Les Miserables, Kiss of the Spider Woman, and of course, he played Maxwell in the season 9 Seinfeld episode, The Maid. Please welcome Tony Crivello. Tony, thanks for joining.
Yeah, Maxwell from Made to Order. It's a pun.
Yeah, an unforgettable scene, unforgettable episode for sure. So Tony, take us back. All right, this was April 30th of 1998. Believe
Correct.
it or not. Curious when you actually went through the process, but just take us back. So, was there an audition process for Maxwell?
It was.
Obviously, you had an incredible career before Seinfeld, but we'd love to hear a little bit of how the role came about.
Well, but this has been a continuous highlight. I got to tell you, and I mean it is sort of serendipitous the way it all happened. Through Broadway, I knew Jason Alexander, and I sent you a picture. I'd actually worked with Wayne Knight at the Lincoln Center in a production of Measure for Measure, and great guys, and then at the time I was living in Los Angeles on Sycamore Avenue, and my next door neighbor Tom Keith was a second assistant director on Seinfeld. And so it was like sort of circling. And then in addition to that, I had worked years when I first got launched into the sort of the meat of my theater was started in Chicago. And I worked with Brad Hall in a production, an original musical called Do Black Patent Leather Shoes Really Reflect Up? And at the time, one of the replacements was Megan Mullally. And Brad was actually dating her a little bit to begin with. Then he wound up starting the Practical Theater Company, and then he was dating Julia, and the rest is history. So it was like there was a lot of
connections,
separation, and so I came in and auditioned, did the preliminary audition, and got called back. When I got called back, then Jerry was in the room, and Andy Ackerman and Larry David was in the room. And so, just sitting there, they were sitting and, doing lines, and I'm doing Maxwell, and they were conferring. And at the time when I did it, Jerry was feeling a little bit under the weather. And then I got cast. So it was great. And, shot it at the old Mary Tyler Moore studios on Radcliffe. That's where my scenes were shot, and then they were in studio over I think it was Paramount. And in doing it, when we got to set, Jerry had a terrible cold. So and it was happening. We were doing table reads, and it was really starting to get bad. So they wrote in, lines where he said, I was at a rodeo. It's at the top of the episode where he says, I'm at a rodeo and all that, just cover, because he said, they said to ask him, they said, you want to delay, push it back a little bit. And he said, no, let's keep going, let's shoot. So we did. So the great thing about that, and great thing about table read, is that you got to see the company work and really develop and and Andy Ackerman is, I mean, his body of work speaks for itself. The guy's a terrific director and just really knows comedy, and so it's just a wonderful process. And watching all of them work, it was great. And specifically like Michael Richards. I mean, Michael, he was sweet, very complimentary to me and stuff, and you know at one point turned to Andy Ackman and said, "Oh, this guy's good," and so which was great. And Michael, that coming from that improvisational, Fridays, all this stuff that he did
Right.
with that, and that same kind of wacky, thing that he brought. It's interesting to watch the journey of Michael and in particular, because I mean for all of them too, how the characters evolved as the series went on, how they really settled into place, how the chemistry really started working more and more, and then when they were bringing in ancillary players to augment casts, and like Wayne,
Right.
and playing Newman, and how they just seamlessly sort of fell together. It just really was a really enjoyable experience, and having being able to work with people that a few of them that I knew as well.
Right. Yeah. It's incredible. And it's interesting because you were there pretty much right at the end. There was about 2 episodes, right? Coming up. So they were really obviously, well,
Yeah, and even that proved serendipitous, because what happened was I shot my scenes at the on the back lot at the old Radcliffe Mary Tyler Moore Studios, so because our stuff was out, was all outdoors, and then I was invited to do the curtain call, even though my scenes were shot. So we did our curtain call, and which was videotaped too. And they when they did the final wrap up episode, they used the curtain call from the episode that I did in that wrap up episode. It's just there for a clip. So I wind up getting paid for 2 episodes when I did one. So it's nothing but serendipitous. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And just going back to like Chris said, the audition, like I've seen the episode a lot, obviously, but I rewatched it, right before this, and your combination of dark and funny and how you just flip the switch is like perfect. Like I'm assuming that's how you landed the role, by just being able to kind of show that like fine line.
That was part of it. That there's this, it's menace and comedy at the same time.
Right.
And which is part of my MO. And the other thing about the whole situation, it being recognized to do that. And sometimes people only see me in one vein, playing a heavy and whatever, but I've done a lot of comedy throughout my career. So, and I love doing comedy and playing off those guys. And yet, I watch sometimes I'll see it or whatever, if it's in a rerun or, portion of it on my demo. And I go, man, I should have done this. I should have done that. You second guess yourself up the wazoo and said, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I react this way? And whatever, it happens.
Well, you nailed it, man. I mean, whoa, give it to the girl. I'm an independent contractor, right? Yeah. Incredible stuff. So, and sorry, go back to the audition again. You slipped this in here, and I wasn't aware that Larry David was there, because as we all know, Larry was offset in theory, seasons 8 and 9. He came back for the finale. So really interesting that he was there for this.
Yeah, as I recall that Larry was sort of, they were sitting on a couch and he was off to one side, he didn't, there was some conferring, and maybe he was there because of the fact that Jerry was feeling a little bit ill. I don't know.
And also they brought him back for the finale, obviously, to write it. And this was so close to that he probably just came back and was just hanging out, or like you said, helping Jerry out. But that's really cool that happened. And so you touched on that your scenes were kind of shot, like you said, outside mainly. So take us to that kind of, like you said, that first scene with Jerry, Seinfeld and the whole thing there, like, Jerry under the weather, but he's such a pro. I'm assuming he made that easy for you. I mean, like you said, they're unselfish, right? He kind of gave you, you kind of stole the whole scene, right? So that's kind of interesting how the star kind of lets the co-star, the guest star, if you will, come in and kind of take over.
Well, it's kind of you to say that. I mean, because I don't feel I stole the scene. But, I mean, he's, he was very receptive. I mean, sort of what you see in interviews of Jerry and stuff, and his personality. And again, he was a little under the weather, so he was still sort of bucking it up and doing it. And Andy Ackerman. There's actually some shots online and stuff you can see that I posted because a friend of his, Tom Keith, who was a second assistant, was there snapping pictures for me. And I mean, he just did it. I didn't even ask him, did it, and then sent it to me after the fact. So you can see like the working atmosphere. They had it set up on the back lot, the street with the cars sitting there, and and basically he just framed it, shooting the scene in singles and two shots and doing it, and until the whoa, give it to the girl, that walking off, and pulling the the typical that New York pulling the shirt just in the shoulders and then leave it. It was we shot, I'd say he must have covered it maybe about six times, and then doing singles on us as well. And that Andy did it, and then once they had it, like, hey, we got it, and and he was pleased, and then move on. And then that other little scene, obviously with Kramer at the very end too, with Michael, which was a hoot, driving in that Cadillac, and that he improved. That last line is improvised, where as we're slowly going out of frame, and these are soft seats. That's him just off. He delivered, I think, 3 or 4 different taglines as we were going off, and they picked one. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Incredible. And you mentioned, such a New Yorker, and you did come off as such a New Yorker, but you are a proud Milwaukeean, if that's the proper term.
I am. And, solid Wisconsin sports, Green Bay Packers and Badgers and Brewers. And I'm, you can see behind me, Marquette University. I'm an alum in Milwaukee.
And we know you did the one-man play dedicated to Al McGuire, who's
exactly
an all-timer, obviously. Rick Majerus on that staff, that whole team, unbelievable. Yeah, tell us a little bit about Milwaukee, and listen, how's a guy from Milwaukee end up on the side of Seinfeld? It's unbelievable.
I'll tell you how it is. Yeah. The vibe of Milwaukee, and specifically at that time, I was raised. I'm an inner city boy, but I went to grade school in what was called Milwaukee's East Side, and so it was very mixed ethnicity, but still predominantly Italian. And the feel of in Milwaukee is it. Even though you're Midwest, the feel in Milwaukee, and specifically among the Italians, is it's very Milwaukee's got an East Coast vibe in its own sort of sleepy way, and so because of that, even as a kid when I was growing up, people would say to me every once in a while, "Where are you originally from?" And I'd say, "I'm from Milwaukee," and and they go, "Yeah, no, you don't. You read East Coast. You read, that you're not from Milwaukee. I don't have that. I mean, it's certain words, Milwaukee, will come out, and and at certain terms, the Milwaukeeans who know what a bubbler is, which is a water fountain. I mean, it is, there's certain idiosyncratic terms and things like that you're definitively from Milwaukee. But because of that, and then spending time, first in Chicago and then years in New York City, it just, New York City always, both those cities also just kind of always felt like home. And less so Los Angeles, where I live now.
Right.
To be perfectly honest, it drives me a bit crazy. It's great to go. It's great to go back. I love going into the old neighborhoods, and whether it is in Milwaukee or Chicago or it is New York, and going to the that restaurant, which was on the upper West Side, that was the definitive exterior, was part of Seinfeld too, and
right.
So it is. There's definitive things about it that were just sort of intrinsically in my blood, And so that's why, flipping a switch and doing a character like Maxwell is, easy peasy for me.
Talking about flipping, I mean, just your body of work is very it covers all spectrums. I mean, like you said, between Broadway and musicals and TV and comedy and Second City and improv. Like, I mean, it's incredible how I know you mentioned Chicago. I mean, did you spend time at Second City or
I did a little bit.
Improv background.
Yeah, I was doing some theater and I was fortunate enough, Del Close was the primary teacher at the time. And Del, let me come in and sit in on classes and participate a little bit. And so I was able to do that. And, I've always been a big fan of improv and did a little bit. And then eventually that Second City experience segued into New York. At one point, I was working with Chicago City Limits when they were touring at the Janus Theater in the basement of a church, on the it was the east side, and so studied there and a little bit and worked with some really talented people, at Chicago City Limits too, and made friendships that exist to this day with people that were there, and that experience too of like doing all that, the comedy, and improv too. It serves you in so many ways, the spontaneity of it all and the way you work and just also, offered me that opportunity to continue to work on doing comedy, which I love so much.
Yeah, and you mentioned I think it was Measure for Measure was the play you did with Wayne Knight. So you hooked up with Wayne Knight and Jason, I guess in the 80s, right? In New York?
Yeah, I mean, I was running across with them. I mean, Wayne, we actually worked together. I didn't work with Jason, but I know him, sort of in passing and because of the Broadway scene. Wayne, I actually worked with. Wayne and I came in as replacements in that production at the Lincoln Center, Measure for Measure. And we were in it for the last about maybe a month and a half, 2 months. And Wayne's such a great, funny guy and sweet. And I sent you a picture that is backstage with myself and Phil Moon and Wayne. It was between scenes and we were literally like, hey, let's take a photograph. And so it was the three of us coming out of a closet, like a broom closet, and Wayne was laughing his rear end off as we were doing it. And, it was, great, same thing, a lot, little comedic bits inside Measure for Measure and working that out. And, he's Wayne's a real warm, receptive guy too. I mean, I have to say, and that was same thing for cast members. I mean, they were really, doing their work, doing their job, making sure they were hitting their marks, et cetera, but also receptive and, taking care of business and receptive to new people and working and bouncing off, other actors, which was really, very kind of them. And that's part of the reason the success of the show, because you can see it in the interplay, not obviously with my scene too, but in that entire series, what they managed to maintain, bringing characters in and out, and and how successful and how some of those characters became iconic in themselves, like Soup Nazi, and you just gotta you gotta love Jerry Stiller and all of his work. I mean, the most brilliant stuff on that show, and the rapport between obviously Jerry and Jason and Julia and a couple times. And I love the outtake stuff that happens that you can see online. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah. It would have been great if Newman was in your episode. I would have been great. A little reconnect there for you, I bet. But
I mean, in my dream, like a lot of the characters, as you said, it was like final season. I was like, oh man, I wish they would bring Maxwell back. That was so much fun.
Yeah, it's interesting, just doing some research, and sometimes, not a lot of research is always correct, but I know it's like 25, 30 years ago, but it does say, somewhere in the research I read that there was a scene that was deleted that you were in with Jerry, where you kind of touched on a little bit more of what the maids do, maybe. I don't know if you remember that or if you remember kind of an extra scene.
Yeah, I don't know. It may have been in a
Like a
previous
table read
copy.
or
I don't,
something.
that was there, or somebody was wishful thinking and saying, "Hey, man, let's create another scene here," which would have been great. It is. I always, selfishly so, and whether I was a part of it or not, I wish they would do, like, in my mind's eye, some kind of a reunion, and just to,
Right.
what a Seinfeld special. I think it would be, it's a time gone, but it's such a beloved sitcom, and somebody said it to me as well after I'd done it, and when it first appeared. Somebody said to me, "Man, you must be really excited and happy." And I said, "You mean about doing the episode and all that?" And they said, "No, because you're part of television history." And
Yeah.
it's the truth. I mean,
Yep.
it's such an iconic sitcom, and it's why you see it every single day in repeats over and over and over again, and people just can't get enough of all of those episodes.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, my backdrop here is the old TV guide from
Yeah.
1996, before your episode. Is Seinfeld the best comedy ever?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the best sitcom ever. It's the best show ever. There's a lot of debates. So this had to be really special. This was season 9, right? I mean, actually, yeah. Before we get to season 9, so you brought up Stiller and all these great characters.
Right.
Sounds like you were a big fan of the show. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I am. And I mean, I've not seen every single episode, but I sure have seen a boatload of them.
Yeah.
And in particular, I have my favorites. And then, so what I'll do is.
All right, what do you got? Give me your top 3 favorites.
Oh, I mean, it's just Jerry stuff. Festivus for the rest of us.
Okay.
Manzier,
Bro, yeah.
And it's the one where I forget what the thing. It's Jerry smacks George in the head. I mean, and there's several of them like that way, or that I just, you just love, and you love seeing it over and over again. I mean, the whole episode with the dancing Julia doing that terrible dance. It is. I can't. The episode with Jerry with the that frilly shirt. I mean, it is. I could go on and on and on. And so many of them with George. Episode that there was an episode where he's trying to get a date with this girl. He eats the pastry out of the garbage can.
Hovering. Yeah, it was hovering.
I mean,
hey, we've all been there, Tony, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it was hovering.
I mean, that's the appeal, as you go, I hate to admit it, but I've done that. I've done that, or I've walked in on that, and so it is. They think that's what rings so true about Seinfeld. That Jerry and Larry, they took it to an extreme, but the truth of the matter is that it rings real. I mean, that's what
relatability.
Yeah, it's reality, and God knows. I mean, on and on and on. We need to laugh as a society. We don't have enough of it, and Seinfeld is just consistent that you can go back and still, even though you've seen certain things, over and over again, you just go, I want to see it again.
Yeah, and speaking of seeing it, 33 million tuned in for your episode, The Maid, which was unbelievable. Obviously, a lot of hype. You were the third to last episode, I believe.
Yeah.
I guess, could you feel that on set? I mean, I know there was it was kind of the countdown, if you will.
Yeah, there was a portion of it, and because of being in the last episode as well, because they took the
Right.
The curtain call, and I was there. I was actually there for the final party, their little rap.
Oh, that's great.
So you could tell that they knew, that there was sort of a bittersweetness to knowing that it was that is wrapping up. On one hand, saying, we've done this, we've played it out. We don't want to be here without it being absolutely at its sharpest that it can be.
Right.
And so, we could stretch it another season or two, but, I think they sort of felt that going out on top, but at the same time, there was even on, on set and in the reading that you could feel that the clock was ticking and that they were feeling that, the primary cast and beyond, and even crew, and they were, very fortunate. I mean, the crew that they had as well, they were tight, they were receptive,
Yeah.
they loved their job, it was just a great atmosphere. And it was, it had to be, very bittersweet for them at the same time, even though you go, you're going to be in reruns, you're going to collect
Right.
residuals for reruns and stuff. But they really created something that was unique. And in the beginning, I've seen Jury in interviews talk about the fact that, he didn't know whether or not this thing was going to fly, and that there wasn't certain action. And obviously, like even the Kramer character, that was an addendum. That was not meant to be part of the regular, it was supposed to be a threesome that turned into a foursome. I've read or seen interview stuff where like Julie was talking about the fact that, the way the character of Elaine is written, it's written for a man. She specifically said, write this like you're writing for a guy. And then she took the bull by the horns, and which was really terrific because it also helped in great writing, to cement that camaraderie that was, almost, if you will, within that apartment. It's like a locker room, it had that kind of crazy feel of the coming and goings and all of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You picked up on that because we've talked to a few of the writers, and a lot of them, especially Peter Melman, a big writer early on, said he wrote. It was easy for him to write for Elaine because he just wrote it like a guy, and then she would just take off with it, like you said. Like it's really interesting. Speaking of that camaraderie and that the set. Did you have any interactions? I know a lot of your shots, you said, your shots were kind of off lot, but we spoke with your co-star, your 1099 employee, Angela Featherstone, who actually played the maid. I don't know if you had any interaction or talking about it on set, like, can you believe we're here, or any
I haven't, and just, I did. I hadn't because there, stuff over there was stuff where we did the table reads and stuff like that. But because of the fact the interaction was meant, there was no interaction with her. I knew of the character and I knew what she looked like and all of that, which helps me and playing the scene too. When I sent one of my girls over to your place, in knowing exactly what that girl looked like. You're a little sneaky, aren't you? That whole. So it was, it's just great.
You mentioned earlier too that you knew, maybe you could just refer. You knew, what was it, the second assistant you said from Seinfeld, or was it the
Tom Keith? Yeah, Tom Keith. He was my next door neighbor. For a period of time. And so I knew he was working on it and was and was called there and stuff. And then when I booked it, he was like, oh, great, just he was elated, and so that I was there on, and we were doing table read, and I was in on. The other process and watching the rehearsal process, because I was in the room. We didn't rehearse on set. We rehearsed off set, until we got to the actual location. And we did a little bit of rehearsal once we got there, but then it was, shoot it. But I was in the rehearsal room, and, when we were doing table read, etc. So I'm watching them all work at the same time, and there's no better, comics love to watch comics, and comic actors, love to watch other comic actors and see what they do. And especially if you've done a bit of improv too, improvisational actors love to watch other actors improv and in what they bring to the comedy. And each one of them, at that point, they were so comfortable in the characters too. So and just able to just roll with it, and yet there was a few things that changed as things were going on, and they were adjusting lines and things like that, and but it was also, there was room for improvisation within the framework of what you were given.
Yeah, and you certainly nailed it. It's funny though. You earlier you kind of sounded like Al McGuire a little bit. As a coach, you said you would have done things differently. What would you have done different? I thought it was perfection, but what?
Oh, the one line is that always I go, oh, I should have done is when I say when I said okay, now it's not coming to me. It's the line about wait if I roll
The
the
mob
die.
ringer? Which line?
No. It's the first scene. In the first scene when I say wait a minute, you're the girl. Them other girls here plays. You're a little sick, aren't you? Disinfectant on the blinds, vacuum the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I would I forget. There's another line right there, and it was do you know what I do to people who stiff me on a job? That line. Do you know what I do with people who stiff me on a job? And I would have gone, well, it kind of depends on the situation. That the emphasis that stiff has a sexual connotation to it and didn't come off of it. And I every time I see that, I go, oh man, I should have dared. And I didn't. So, missed that.
That's good. Yeah, Ackerman would have let that go through for sure.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
It's funny the connections you mentioned: Brad Hall, Megan Mullally, who played Betsy, George's girlfriend on the episode. Tom Keith. Actually, I'll give you a little trivia here, Tony. 1990, your Law and Order episode. There was a big Seinfeld alum in that episode. Can you remember? Don't look at it.
In 1990, Law and Order. Oh my God! I mean, you're really going back in the annals. There were so many actors.
John McManus. He was in the big race for Seinfeld.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, and it still are. Yeah. So many wonderful actors in New York and beyond, Los Angeles, and those. It's just in that case, Law and Order. It's shot in New York. It's amazing. Even if I look back on my career, how many people, that I've worked with that are, I've had the pleasure of working with that have either gone on to have other, a substantial career, or some of them haven't, but really talented people. I'm constantly like, I worked with this person, I worked with that person, or my children will say it to me too. Oh yeah, Dad worked with this guy. Dad worked, with this lady or whatever actress. I'm buddies with Titus Welliver, and we did a TV movie, the Lost Capone together, and Titus is really bringing it up right now with Bosch. Yeah. And they're going to shoot a whole portion of a season in London, which is great. Wow. His wife is British, and so he's going to be doing that. Or, you cross paths with people, like I said, Wayne in doing theater. And, right. I'm good friends with Tony Shalhoub, and he's a buddy of mine. We worked together in a Broadway production of Golden Boy. But Tony and I are also both fellow Wisconsinites, and that's where your origins, him from Green Bay, me from Milwaukee, but we're both huge Packer fans. So during football season every year, we're like texting back and forth and doing that. And I'll see Tony every once in a while if I come into New York City and stuff like that. And that's a great thing about, this, it's been fortunate in the career from the standpoint that, it is, you make some really good friendships along the way. And a few of them, they become really sort of lifelong. And, I'm in the process right now of trying to get a play to move forward that we did 2 readings of in New York City and we put together a stellar cast with Rob Sedgwick. Rob, if that sounds familiar, Rob's sister is Kira, his brother, Kira Sedgwick, brother-in-law Kevin Bacon, his niece is Sochi and right. Bacon, and Rob is a really talented actor. He's teaching now, but he writes too, and he wrote this brilliant, satirical comedy, and we're trying to continue. It's a tough road, like anything that you do in the business and trying to push a project forward. It's a, it's a tough road to get people to believe and sign up for it and invest money in it, et cetera. I go back again to what I was saying before about Jerry and Larry. You do it and you do Seinfeld, but you really don't know when you're launching, what do we have here? What do we do? And having the brilliance to go, Michael, that Michael needs to become part of a foursome, and recognizing that right up front, or bringing in players, like I said, like Wayne or whatever, or Jerry Stiller or whatever, and I mean, I could go on and on with, so many of them that were the ancillary supporting players that were brilliant in each one of them, what they did.
Yep. And they always just looked for the funny, and there was egoless, and they had a conviction and a vision. Yeah, it's incredible. You just went through a lot of your career, and I touched on that earlier, but I'm curious from your perspective. You've done so much and so much varied stuff. What do you like? What is more enjoyable to you? What's most fun for you? Is it Broadway? Is it drama? Is it TV? Is it movies? Is it all of it, or do you have like something you kind of hold more?
What's the most fun is when you're working and it's successful.
Right.
It is, I get as much pleasure. You said before about McGuire, about portraying Al McGuire. I mean, I got great pleasure out of doing Al McGuire, and hopefully we're actually trying to see if we can get it remounted one more time, because the anniversary of McGuire's NCAA championship team, the 50th anniversary is 2027. So it's right around the corner. And so we're slowly like seeing if we can assemble one last time. And, I love doing comedy. I do love doing comedy. And whether, I love doing film, but the film experience is completely different than stage.
Right.
It's and when you're in, and I've done them, I've done long runs of shows. My longest run that I had was Phantom of the Opera, and which was 6.5 years, over 2,400 performances, and so it is, it's a different kind of liking. It is. To quote Jerry Orbach, Orbach was asked when he was doing NYPD Blue, or was that right? It was the NYPD.
Law and Order.
Law and Order. Sorry, Law and
Order.
And when he was doing Law and Order, I saw him in an interview, and they said to him, "Well, you had this storied career, and things have gone so well for you, and it's been, you've gone to all mediums, and and now you've got this, and you just won an Emmy Award, and you must feel, you've had such security your whole career." And he said, "Oh, no. You're constantly wondering whether or not the job is going to end. If the network is going to say, 'Hey, we're canceling,' you're wondering whether or not the audience is going to show up, if it's a Broadway show or if it's off Broadway, or you're doing it somewhere else. And if somebody's going to say that's it, we're done." And so they said, "Well, when did you finally feel secure?" And Jerry Orbach said, "Well, once I won the Emmy and I knew this was a series that was going to just continue and continue, and Law and Order was going to keep on going and going." Yeah, I said to myself, maybe I can relax a little bit now, finally. But it's rare. It's rare. And, and it is, I've been fortunate that I've, in a career that I've, as you say, I've spanned all media. I mean, I would love, and I am, I just want to do more film. And, would love it if, some TV thing, a recurring or whatever, popped up, and, and I was doing more and more of it. They'll pop up every once in a while, but you're always, the actor, every actor has starving actor syndrome, and you just want to, it goes with the territory. You just want to keep on as much as possible working. It's now I've got 2 kids, and, and they're both, he's a senior in high school and is about to go, into the college ranks. And it's and he runs cross country and track. And my daughter is a freshman, and she plays volleyball and softball. And I spend a lot of time, wanting to going to their events and seeing them participate and play, so that's the blessing of going, hey, I've got a little bit of time and I can do things. And
Are they Seinfeld? Are they Seinfeld fans, Tony?
Yeah, it's a little tougher. It's this generation that are watching what is coming out with this generation. They've seen some stuff. They've seen things that your father has done. They haven't seen all of it, but they've seen a few things. They sort of chuckle at their, at dad, and it's like, yeah, okay, you did that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the McGuire one-man show. That brings you. It all comes full circle here to the Packers. I saw Lombardi on Broadway. That was a great show.
Yeah.
All right. So and thanks for Aaron Rodgers. I really worked that for the Jets with us. But so, are you a Favre guy?
I knew it was a mistake.
You did. All right.
Yeah. Speaking of Rob, I said Rob Sedgwick before. I said, and he's in New York, and Rob said to me, we were talking, and I said, so what do you think about Rodgers going to the Jets? And he said, the Jets are the team where quarterbacks go to die. And I'm like, you're right. And who would have thunk it? 4 plays in, a torn Achilles. Who would have thunk it? And it was, but at the same time, and it was rough. Same thing when they were, we have to move on from Favre to go to Rodgers. They were faced with that same type of dilemma. And
Favre came to the Jets too and hurt himself after going 8-3. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Rodgers is still trying to sort of keep the career going and moving, and he's an intelligent guy and a talented athlete. There's no doubt about it. I have my opinions about him right now is at the age of, what is he going to be, 42 now, as a quarterback. And, he could easily segue into the broadcast booth. There's a lot of things that he could be doing as well. I love football, but it's a brutal game, man. And, he's fortunate that he's still doing it. You look at even Brett Favre right now. Brett Favre is showing, signs of what it was being hit over and over and over again. Or you look at a guy like Jim McMahon, memory loss and things like that, what the guys go through, and it is, when they're paid to do what they do, you go, yeah. When you look at the end results and, sometimes shortening of their lives, I go all the way back to a guy like Mike Webster, who played center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was University of Wisconsin grad too. I've heard stories about when he was there and coming out of a huddle or whatever, he had no idea because he, walking concussions. You didn't have the concussion protocol that you have nowadays. That stuff. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Speaking of, you mentioned the booth, and you also, I know your Milwaukee Brewers. You mentioned earlier we lost a brewer icon recently. Do you have any run-ins with Euchre ever as a Milwaukee native?
I did it, and I wish to God I did, because I'm such a fan of his too. That's another one of my, sometimes I go to, I'll go and watch Euchre on Carson, or Don Rickles on Carson, or I watch Dangerfield on Carson. I just love those segments just to get into them, and I could watch them over and over again. It's just to laugh. But Euchre in particular, he was so much of the fiber for how many years, for the Brewers and in the broadcast booth and beyond. And such a talented man, and so funny, and that self-deprecating, dry delivery humor that he would do and pull it off. And talk about improv when he's sitting there and doing, the things that he would do even on Carson. A lot of that he's just riffing. And same thing with his Hall of Fame induction. When he was saying the stuff that he was saying, a portion of it is always riffing. I heard a report about Euchre. And they said the most valuable thing about Euchre when he was with the Milwaukee Braves and then Atlanta Braves, when he would bounce a couple teams in his career, they said was that Bob Euchre was the guy that you wanted in the clubhouse because he could keep things light. And even if you were losing, he could keep guys happy and keep you going. And like I said before about people, we need to laugh more. And he was that guy, and he did it for so many years, man, in the broadcast booth. From Milwaukee.
You nailed it. He was the fiber of that community, that team, baseball in general.
Absolutely.
You mentioned cars. Yeah, I mean, listen, they don't make them like they used to, but I tell you, it's something. But they don't make them like you anymore either, Tony. We can't
I don't
thank
know
you
about
enough. Oh no, listen. I mean, I think that's like I said, Seinfeld. You talked about it. The beauty of the show is the unselfishness of the stars and how they let the guest stars shine. And whether it was you or Angela Featherstone in your episode, you know, you're forever known in that role. I mean, that's what separates the show and what separates great actors like you. So
well, thank you.
Hats off to just a brilliant career, and I know you're going to keep going. So
well, from your mouth to God's ears. I mean,
right here, exactly. So hey, thanks for making us laugh, and we can't thank you enough for spending some time.
My
with us
pleasure.
tonight.
Guys, I mean, Tony and Chris, I really appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on as well on the podcast. And I wish you both all the best.
Thank you, Tony. This was so much fun. Appreciate it. Thanks.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Cheers.
Have a good night.
We'll see you.